Let's go. All right. So again, welcome everybody. Everybody's joined so far and those continuing to join. I'm Jon Leslie, an Agile coach at Cove Insights, and I'm joined today by Patric Palm, who's one of the founders and CEO of Favro. Welcome again. Today's topic is recruitment and onboarding for fast-growing companies. Over to you, Patric.
Yeah, so just to kick this off, we need to address, why this is so important. There's basically two things. If you are in a company which is recruiting at a very high pace, the whole operation around recruitment and then onboarding and then into the rest, it is something that there will be a lot of change. There will be a lot of interaction between various teams in a company, and this is something which Favro basically is built for. Collaborative planning, across teams. So sometimes people say that, well, Favro isn't that mostly kind of engineers, software developers, product teams, game developers, using it. No, it's actually not at all true. If you look at our customer base, it's teams from all different parts of an organization, and you also have customers where there are not really any engineers. If you look at Favro clients like Volt or PricewaterhouseCoopers, it's people with different jobs that are using the tool on an everyday basis to have a higher business agility. So the first reason is just handling all that change in a very transparent and good way. Now, the second thing is that all of this has got a little bit more challenging in the post-COVID world, because most organizations are moving into kind of a hybrid approach with remote first or partially remote. But just generally speaking, the way the future looks is that companies and teams are more distributed. And then the kind of tools that you're using are becoming relatively more important. And this is why we thought it would be a good idea to just share, some of the good practices that we're seeing with some of our clients, and to share that with all of you, so you have something very much in practice on how to actually do this. So with that said, back to you, Jon.
All right, thanks, Patric. So yeah, why don't we jump right in, and I will show you some kind of real world case studies of how people are using Favro, not only to handle their recruitment for, as Patric said, in this new hybrid world, but also their onboarding in a very visible, transparent, making sure that everybody in the organization knows exactly how things are progressing and when it's their turn to do their bit. Okay, so sharing my screen. And we're going to start out here from a leadership perspective. So as Patric said, again, Favro is a tool built not just for engineers. It's built for marketing teams. It's built for all aspects of the company, including leadership, of course, to achieve that kind of holy grail of overall business agility through the entire organization. So starting here at the leadership level, this is kind of a common practice to have a portfolio dashboard, or a leadership dashboard as it's called here. You can see that they're driving their strategic initiatives, their new business opportunities. They're ranking these and estimating these in a what's called portfolio backlog. And these are all the business initiatives, some people call them business epics, that are going to be driving this business forward in the future. Those are typically committed to a portfolio Kanban, as you see here over on the right, going through the various stages. These can be linked down to the team level or program levels, so that you're able to drill from these business initiative levels down into the lower levels throughout the organization. So all the way down and all the way back up. Once these things are committed to a board like this, you're able to switch this to different views. So maybe you want to look at this in a different way, in a Sheets view, a little more data, or maybe you want to turn it into a roadmap and look at it from a roadmap timeline perspective. So with that in mind, also in this leadership dashboard is a recruitment backlog. So one of the ongoing high-level efforts in any fast-growing company is of course, recruitment. And here you have not a prioritized list of business initiatives or features for a development team, but in this case, you have your open positions, your open recs. So we have something like Chief Marketing Officer, for example, and maybe this is the next open position that we're thinking about recruiting for. So you'd pull this into this portfolio Kanban like this. It's going to move from selected into analysis, kind of filling out this card as to how much money do we want to spend on this? What's the budget? What recruitment agency do we want to use? So on and so forth. Once that analysis is done and you're sure that you want to move forward with recruiting for this position. I think I grabbed the wrong card there. Apologize. It's going to eventually move into implement, okay? And you can see a couple of automations triggered there, automatically tagged it as ready to start, and it automatically changed the status to, okay, it's moved from open position to we're now actively recruiting for this position. Now, also once it gets here, Favro has the ability across the board to take big things and break them down into smaller, more achievable things or link things to other things. So in this case, what common best practice is to do is to take this Chief Marketing Officer card representing this recruitment initiative and to break this down to its own board, okay? So that will remain linked to this card. And if anybody wants to see the details as to how this recruitment effort is going for this position, they can always drill down into this broken down board. Now I've already done this and you can see it here. I've broken it down to this Recruit Chief Marketing Officer. And we can drill down into this and look at this from any different perspective. We can see it. Maybe a recruitment agency is helping with this. We've got people operations, HR working on this. Maybe it's even tied to an objective and key results initiative. So I'm going to go to first the HR perspective, and we'll drill down into it here. And okay, we see we're actually making quite a bit of progress. This is a board, again, tied back to that portfolio Kanban, portfolio dashboard. You can see this is the card, and thanks to relations, this HR team now, we're in an HR collection, is able to see that, okay, this is at the implement stage. And from a backlog perspective, this is an actively recruiting position. So this board is tied to that card again. Now, what you're essentially doing here is you're taking your recruitment flow, all of the stages that you go through to recruit various people, and mapping it out onto a board. So we have selected resumes, schedule interviews, background check, offers, through to who ultimately gets hired for this position. Now you could do this for any position, have a different board for each recruitment effort, or a single recruitment board for all of your recruitment efforts, and maybe use tags to indicate the position. But here we're going to focus on Vera Warner. If we open up her card, you can see that the cards in Favro are a full real-time collaborative documents. They're like a Google Doc real-time. You can collaborate on these things with your colleagues, no matter where in the world they're located. We've dragged and dropped in maybe her LinkedIn profile picture. We have her LinkedIn profile link here, and we've also attached her resume, right? So all the information related to this particular candidate. And then of course, as you're going through the various stages, you can continue to have the conversation as to feedback maybe on this particular candidate directly on the card itself. So as this gets moved in, maybe Vera, we like what we see from a resume standpoint, schedule some interviews. If those interviews go well, maybe you get great feedback on the card. Again, having that living history, not only of all of the requirements, things we're looking for, maybe interview scripts, so on and so forth on the card, but also the conversation on the card as to maybe feedback, how the interviews went, maybe things that aren't so good, things that are great, so on and so forth. So now as this is moving through to, all right, interviews went well, let's do a background check. That went well too. Let's actually make the offer. Through to she accepts the offer and ultimately ends up becoming hired. Okay. So again, very transparent, an excellent way to visualize the flow of basically anything, including your recruitment efforts. Very transparent, very visible. Now, a couple of things happened there when Vera was pulled into hired. You can see that it automatically tagged this as onboarding. It also tagged the first person in the onboarding effort, which is this James. And it also automatically added this card to a second Kanban board or flow-based board, an onboarding board. Okay. And I just happen to have that down here. Now, this might exist in a completely separate collection, but because the boards and backlogs, cards can exist in multiple collections at the same time, it's very easy to see what other teams are working on. So even though this might maybe exist in another team's collection, you can also see it here in the HR collection. Now, I also want to call out with that in mind that maybe you weren't just recruiting for this position internally, you also had the help of a recruitment agency. So for them to help, you could invite that recruitment agency maybe as an external member or as an external guest, and they could be contributing to this recruitment effort directly in line with your internal teams by sharing the same board across both, your HR team's collection and also this external recruitment agency collection. So very important to realize that you can do this because the boards can exist in multiple places at the same time. But back here to the onboarding effort, same type of thing. So what is your onboarding flow? And if you have hundreds, of people being onboarded simultaneously, it's very powerful to be able to see in a very visual way exactly what stage of the onboarding effort each and every new hire is currently at. So here, for example, let's say Patrick was also hired for a position and he gets flag automatically added to this onboarding flow like this. So here from the onboarding team's perspective, thanks to relations, we can of course see that these candidates were ultimately hired. And up here from an HR perspective, we're always able to see, thanks to the relations on the card, exactly what stage of the onboarding flow each one of these new hires is currently at. And that is all done with a very simple automation that looks like this. This is the automations gallery. If I open this up, you can see that as soon as a candidate moves from any of these stages to hired, we want to trigger multiple actions. So we want to automatically assign the person who's responsible for starting out that onboarding effort. We want to automatically add the card, the one that made it to hired, to the employee onboarding flow, that Kanban board. And we automatically want to add a tag indicating very visually that this particular candidate is hired and now currently onboarding. Many different actions you can add: sending messages, creating additional cards, removing tags, adding tags, assigning members, unassigning members. Essentially, you name it, it's something that can be automated in Favro. So that is in soup to nuts, going from the leadership initiative as to we want to hire this for this particular position. We want to recruit for this particular position, going through that entire flow and visualizing that flow. As soon as somebody is hired, automatically adding them to an onboarding flow and simultaneously visualizing that flow. And since you can have the boards in multiple places at the same time, being able to see those flows wherever you need to see them, essentially creating that transparency across teams of teams and levels of the organization. And in the time that we have, that's everything that I wanted to show you. Back to you, Patrick.
Thanks, John. I want to remind everyone that we have a Q&A box, so feel free to ask any questions about this, and we will answer them right away. John, there was one thing you shown that I thought that, maybe you can just go a little bit deeper on. We ourselves are using, various recruitment agencies in different countries when we hire, and then we will set up a collection as basically a collaboration platform with them, and we will have a board, for that recruitment pipeline that, basically they manage. And then we have that visualized in an internal recruitment collection. And in this case, well, in this way, this becomes very easy. But maybe, John, you can just share again, and maybe you can share like a collection with like an external and the settings that you can have on a collection, and the fact that you can have guest accounts and and external members and these kind of things, because it's such a common case with recruitment.
Sure. Yeah, so continuing on with this recruitment example, you can see we have a separate collection for that recruitment agency. And this could be either the same board, okay, as we have in this example, or the recruitment agency could have an entirely separate board. And they would have, they could configure their own flow, or you could configure it for them. Maybe get some internal feedback at some point, or internal review, so on and so forth, eventually to hired. So a couple of things here, as Patrick mentioned, there's different ways to work with externals. Favro had this in mind from day one. So when you're managing your members who you're going to add to this particular collection, you're probably going to have an internal owner. And then the members of this particular collection can either be members, external members. And if I go here, you can see through administration, when you add members, there is an option to have these people set up as external members, which means that they have or can have all of the powers of a regular internal member, an internal employee. But when they log in, by default, they do not see organization-wide collections. So they're only going to see the collections that are specifically assigned to them when they log in, ensuring that they stay isolated essentially as an external partner. There's also the option to invite them as an external guest. So they would not have the full functionality of a full-blown Favro member, but they could do things like add cards, update cards, and move cards on a board, although they probably wouldn't have the option to configure boards, create automations, create boards of their own, that type of thing. So back here at manage members, external members are treated once they're in the collection exactly like internal members. So as long as you check this, members can create and reorder boards, then those external members could use this to create their own boards, reorder boards that maybe you created, so on and so forth. And then at the board level, through permissions, you can get very specific and say these external members can add and edit cards, yes or no. If they can do that, can external members configure this board? Maybe you don't want them to be able to reconfigure the board, so you want to lock it down so you don't check this. Or maybe you do want them to be able to change this board and you flag it like this. And for the guests can also be configured on a board by board basis. You can say guests can add and edit cards, yes or no. And if this was unchecked, then they'd simply have the ability to view the cards, but not add or edit them. And then if you really want to get specific, you can actually set permissions at the column level as to who can add cards here and who can move cards and where can they move them to and from. So you can get very specific with your externals as to what they can do and what they can't do. But the main point being is that once they have this configured, or you have it configured for them, they essentially become an extension of your internal teams. because what you can do with the boards existing in multiple places is take even boards that they created relative to their collection and add them to an internal collection. So maybe you want to put them, maybe you want to add this to the company dashboard, for example. And now you have that recruitment agency Kanban visibility to it, even though it primarily lives in that recruitment agency collection. You're going to have visibility to it from this company dashboard, live in real time, everything that they're doing. So hopefully that answers the question.
Super. And just to clarify one thing, these guest accounts, they're actually free of charge. You know, they are limited, but they're free. So, you know, you have to make a decision there if you kind of want to have more of a, let's say, a full collaboration. And then, you know, these external accounts is probably the right way to go. Or if you want to go with a guest account, which is, you know, having the benefit of being free of charge. We already got 2 questions that came in here. So first, we have one question here, which is, does recruiter need to add candidates manually, or Favro has the opportunity to transfer, for example, LinkedIn profile from LinkedIn? So Favro has you know, an API, you know, you get webhooks, you know, you can do a lot of things kind of automatically. Personally, I actually don't know exactly with LinkedIn, and Dovidas, which is on here now, might actually know that better. But that will be like a perfect thing to ping our team about. It's like, exactly how can I set this up so it integrates with whatever source you have if you want to do some automation here. We're also soon going to release something called Forms, which is going to make, you know, kind of like an input of these kind of things like extremely smooth. So I can't answer specifically on LinkedIn, because I know that the LinkedIn APIs have been changing a bit and been limited before and better now and so forth. So, but that might just be me not being updated. So Dovidas might have a great answer to that. So Dovidas, if you do have that, you know, please jump in. Otherwise, I would just recommend you to ping our team, and we will handhold you, you know, through that.
And one of the simplest ways to add to boards externally is to, you can email to a board.
Yeah. That's actually that's a really easy way to do it. It's just like you can have, so if you have any kind of like automated email happening, and then you simply have that email set up so it emails to the board. Well, there you go. You know, it's an ugly way of an integration, you know, from a software developer point of view. No, it's not beautiful, but it works. So it's great. Okay, we have a second question here. So can you create a report to measure how many days you spend to hire a person? Where do you can save entire search price if done by external agency? So if we start with the first part, Jon, because that one is pretty straightforward. You know, how you measure how many days it takes and doing reports on that.
Okay, so to answer that one, and I love the reporting question actually, because as Patrick and I agree, when you start using a tool like Favro, because it is so transparent, you're actually visualizing all of your work in progress, whether it's developing a feature for a software team or a recruitment effort like this. Everything is so visible, in fact, and there's so much data built into the boards that a lot of the need for actual traditional reports goes away. Because here, for example, you can turn on metrics like time on board and time in column. As you can see here, it's taking a very long time to recruit these people, but in a real world situation, this would show real-time data as to how long in total is it taking to recruit each one of these people that's currently in the recruitment flow, and how long have they been at each and every particular stage in that flow. There's also the ability to create charts and graphs using that data directly on the board itself to visualize those flows and how long things are taking. So for example, I could change this into a CFD to kind of visualize where the bottlenecks are, or a control chart to kind of see for each and every person, how long did it take to recruit that particular person, and how long on average does it take to recruit anybody as soon as they enter this flow. So tons of good data there built directly into the charts. Of course, if you do want traditional reports, there's a traditional reporting tool also built into Favro, where you could get that same type of information, time on board, time in column, cycle time, and lead time, and then slice and dice to visualize that information in different ways, built directly into the tool like this. You can save those reports, share them, and also export to a different tool if you choose to.
Cool. And the second part of the question, which is the kind of like entire research price, if done by an external agency. I'm guessing here that the question refers to kind of, if let's say time spent. So Favro has functionality for putting in basically time reporting. So you can have, how much time you spent on things, and that will be the basis for invoicing. So that's actually all built in if that's the way you're tracking it and using it. It could be that I understand the question wrong there, and I apologize if that's the case, but it's a pretty common practice that agencies would charge like a retainer, and then it would be like, okay, how much time do we spend, etc., etc. So yeah, I think that's it on questions, and we are on time, John.
Yes.
So again, everyone, if you have any questions, just ping our team and we will be able to answer it. And I hope to see you in the next mini summit. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.